Folks, welcome on back here for another fantastic edition of our Traders Talk Workshop, Monday, May 19th. Great to have all of our students and members alike inside our live trading room. Should be good to go. Let me know if you got the screen sharing. If you're inside our live trading room, give me a screen check. We got the mic check taken care of. Great to see Gillis, Pat, Laureen, Kathleen, Margaret, all of us here inside our live trading room. Good to go. You got the screen. There we go. That was at the buzzer. Great to see all of us there. All of us back on YouTube, though. Social media like Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, the works, as I like to say. TikTok as well. I'm not doing dances for you today, but down below on the bottom at cybertradingu, just always feel free to hit the follow or subscribe button just on social media, namely YouTube as well. That's where we host mainly all of our free education there. But with that said, this has been a great market to begin today, right? And for this week. Maybe not too many of us, myself included, expected it, at least coming off the news that came out Friday into today. What happened? Well, basically, Moody's came out where they ended up announcing a downgrade on the U.S., right? It was the first time since, I think, 2011 maybe that they did it. The previous couple of times that there was a big downgrade, maybe I think it was Fitch that did it previously before them. But, the last two times that the U.S. has gotten downgraded as far as like a major economy, like from a major like analyst rating view, the previous time I think was the 5.5% drop, and then the time before that maybe it was 2.5% drop. But the market dropped off a hell of a lot more than it has today. This has been the best reaction coming off of a major downgrade, comparing to those other moments. So yeah, I did not expect to get as good of a push up right away to begin. Not only was there the Moody's downgrade, which everyone I think is always focused on now at this point, but there's also some news that came out with Japan's economy, the president saying that it's like worse than Greece's was, a little while back, and still, they're not doing as good here. But I remember a number of years back where, Greek, residents weren't able to use the banks. They closed the banks down, weren't able to use the ATMs to get your money out of. So when I think about that, and I heard that last night into this morning, Japan's president saying like, yeah, our economy is worse than Greece's was. That's not good. Like, I'm expecting more of a drop today. Was I short? No, because I would not want to short this market. As far as like looking for a trade, maybe, but I'm definitely not confident to short this market right now as much as I am either looking to buy dips or otherwise taking breakout trades. So that leaves us actually here right now, because from the morning session, yeah, we popped right away. We flew up here on the SPY to begin. One more time for the crowd here, folks. Pat, Laureen, Jeff, Margaret, all of our students inside our live trading room. If you had just joined me in class earlier, I'd ask you this question. I'll ask all of us here now. What time is reversal time? We go through this here each and every week, but what time is reversal time? When should we expect reversals within this market? 10:30-ish, right? 10:30-ish, right? So it looks like this topped off on the ish part. 10:18. All right, topped off, came down right before we started our class. Well, guess what? If we're not making lower lows and if we're still holding here pretty well, then it leaves me to ask, well, what if we get a nice push up higher heading into this afternoon? I don't mind taking a trade from a higher price level if there's more conviction behind it. So the fact that we haven't tanked yet is very impressive. And the fact that we're still pushing higher lows here provides thought behind an entry. That just even takes us to the whole market right now, like a Nvidia or something like that. Obviously, Bitcoin was trying to push up earlier too. We'll get to that, of course, later on in this workshop. But we did really well, not just on like the watch list that we put out earlier today. QBTS was a good pop. NVAX and pre-market was a good push then early in the morning. Had a couple others make a pretty quick pop early in the morning as well. But just take a look at maybe some of the other like name brand companies. Amazon's still holding here, holding higher lows, but holding over 205, which as a $5 level definitely holds a lot of weight behind it. Apple hasn't been doing as great lately, but it is on a good rebound today. A nice like V-shaped pattern. This hasn't been doing as good lately comparing the other larger cap companies. But otherwise, though, maybe find a good swing on this over time. But the purpose of going through this is, listen, heading into the day today, I think most people, if not all people, and myself in that crowd, expected a larger drop. But that just goes to show you, though, that let things play out a little bit, because maybe they do tank. Maybe this does make a lower low by 10:30 in the morning or 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, the fact that we haven't done that yet is one thing, but now we're still holding higher lows. It's not even like we're not tanking. We are strong. So that leaves me to say, should we be this strong? I don't mind taking a trade from a higher price level if there's more conviction behind it. So that's where we're heading into the afternoon, and we should be in for a fun one at least. But let's get to a couple trades at least from this morning, folks. We had our morning watch list put out just at 9 o'clock Eastern today. We had our pre-market list, which listen, we did great on NVAX early in the morning. That was a good little push in pre-market, but QBTS. Want to get to this at least here because this is the one that a lot of us have been more familiar with just from day trading it, if not just otherwise swing trading it from the end of last week, right? We were even discussing that. Let me just pull that up here if I can. What was that back from like the 14th or so from last week? It was either on the 14th or on the 15th, but pretty much just saying that the QBTS trade definitely has a pretty strong historical chart. So in terms of just seeing strength in the quantum stocks, yeah, QBTS dropping a little bit now, but this thing was a great runner from earlier this morning. And again, long term, it's something that we had a lot larger of a focus on. I think it was from the 14th. I'm going to go back one more day here, just through the archives of our chat board here. Give me a quick moment, because if you're on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, etc., there, hey, you're missing out because we're here all day. We're posting major call outs like this inside our live trading room. This is it from the 14th. Right? This is back from Wednesday, May 14th. I keep saying March. Wednesday, May 14th, last week, saying, although Rigetti's moving better today, one of the other quantum stocks, I like QBTS from a historical chart perspective a lot more. I mean, both are tradable, but this was my comment from Wednesday. Well, the QBTS trade on Friday, it was exploded, ended up continuing to push higher highs, and then even more so today. So just saying, hey, we're familiar with this stock. Even if you're not swing trading it and you're just day trading it, you know that it's one that we've been talking about. We're more familiar with where the levels are on this trade. So let's go through the motions of just seeing where the best entry was on the stock for this morning. And to begin, really quick, Bob, Margaret, Gillis, Pat, Laureen, all of us here inside our live trading room. For a stock like QBTS, it has a pretty good order book, very tight spread. Lots of orders here at these price levels on both the bid and the ask. This is like live right now. But, hey, for this type of stock, where should we most often look for the iceberg orders? Around what common set of price levels do we often find these icebergs at? Gillis saying 50-cent levels and whole numbers. Folks, do we agree or disagree? Their friend Gillis there. Agree, Pat says. Laureen agrees as well. Yeah, I would say so. So, $12, $12.50, $12.50. Chipping at it here early in the morning. So for each time it's chipping over it, even here. At least there's some formative buying pressure, right? There's some thought behind this eventually blasting above this, 50-cent level as resistance and working that into support, just based off the simple concept of 50-cent level. And then later on, just your next whole number level, I'll type in there at 13. So that's the first thing I would use to plan this trade out. Hey, it's like when you're lost in the woods. It's the old saying. When you're lost in the woods, you look up, you see the North Star, you find your way home. It's kind of cheesy, but our North Star here in this market is 50-cent levels and whole numbers. So before I even look at Bookmap, because that's the necessary thing that we need to do, we need to check out level 3 or otherwise here level 4 Bookmap. But that's the first thing I'll do. Just plot my 50-cent levels and whole numbers here for this stock. Now let's look up Bookmap, and I'm just going to show you right now. It's still loading the data, so I didn't have this up beforehand. I don't really know how this played out as far as like remembering everything. So, all right, I think that we could all see the resistance here. $13. It's about 54,000 shares. Maybe I even do go back to the chart that we had from Friday, the end of last week. There's something I may need to grab from that, actually. Let's see. Could I go back that far? Hopefully my computer doesn't freeze up and crash as I do this, but I'm going to try and go back historically even more, try and go back to Friday's trading if I'm able to. If not, that's fine, but there's something I do want to show you here in just a moment. I can only show me Friday afternoon. I guess I loaded this up Friday at 12:18 Eastern time. So it pretty much just showing me Friday's data. That's all. All right. Well, hey, we did have resistance Friday afternoon at that 13 level. That shows, right? From 12 o'clock all the way to 4 p.m. pretty much, that orange line is out there at 13 bucks. There seemingly though is something right around 12.50, but it looks like they moved their order up a little bit. This is kind of odd. What is this at 12.60? Out there for about an hour and then it disappears. So maybe that's like a nothing burger. Maybe that's nothing that really we should be focused around. We'll see. But how about this? I'm just going to use this as an example because this may play in part with today's move. This is only from like Friday afternoon. Doesn't show the morning, doesn't show other data from prior to this. But if you look on the far right side, this column here where it says CVP, these volume histogram bars here, what price sticks out to you? Is there anything that sticks out there to you as far as like big volume spike there? What price sticks out there as far as that CVP column? Kind of like a 12.25, Gillis says, right around there. Margaret agrees. Sam agrees, like right around there, right? If you said 12.25, that's right. 12.23 if we're trying to get the number like perfect, but whatever. It's 12.25 right there. That could possibly be a good level heading into this morning. Now that could also be based on the closing price from Friday. Let's take a quick look. Just give me a moment here. Yeah, so this is from Friday the 16th. Look at that. The closing price is exactly at 12.25. So that's where you had your closing bell print, the closing price from Friday at the end of last week. That really should be a significant level heading into the day today. So give me a moment. The only line I'm just going to add here is really at 12.25. 12.25, 12.23. That's your closing print from Friday. That also is your CVP spike from Bookmap from Friday afternoon. All right, well, it cut underneath it right away when the market opened up within the first 3 or 4 minutes. It did that, dropped down. I would not be as bullish at 12 bucks here at first. Why? Because I'm expecting the markets to drop. I just told you that earlier. So I don't mind taking a trade from a higher price level if there's more conviction. So it's easy to say, oh, you could have gotten it from 12. Yeah, if anyone jumped in from 12, kudos to them. They made money on this trade. But that's very Captain Hindsight to say. So when the markets are dropping or you're expecting more, bleeding out coming off like the negative news, the Moody's, the Japan stuff, whatever, you miss out on this. So it begins to push back up and above. Now, though, once it begins to push up and above this is where we need to see this begin to form support because it's breaking over it. If it wants to run from this, it's breaking over it here as a resistance now. So if it wants to really try and convert into support, it's got to, make a good pop off of it to start. It's trying here, at least on the first couple of candles. Now, there you go. That's what happens. See what happens now? So there was one point where it cuts underneath it. Doesn't go under and over on this candle, that's for sure. It goes under, drops under it again a little bit here. And then here, once it re-pierces back over it, this does exactly what you need it to do. Makes a better reaction, but then it flips it rightfully into support. So, hey, 1250 was like an assumed level. We can delete that line because there wasn't really anything from Bookmap showing there at 1250 this morning, right? Early this morning, there wasn't like too much at 1250. There was more at 13. So that's your larger level coming up. But otherwise, Friday's closing price, you also had that CVP, volume spike there from the far right side column. To show that one more time, go back one more time just so everyone remembers that. Like when I look at this, I see, big fat spike of volume from Friday afternoon. Even if you don't go back on the daily chart, you could just tell that that's a big volume. That's a big volume level. It's a big level. So the more times it can crack over that and run from it, the goal is to eventually see the flippening of that resistance into a support. All right. So let me know if you have any questions, at least on this QBTS move. But otherwise, yeah, nice entry. And then once it formed support, look what happened. This makes it even sweeter. So it cut under. Started to cut back over. This is the first point where we're seeing the break back over and the run. But this is like the icing on the cake, no pun intended, because iceberg. But you got a couple of different icebergs here, 120,000 shares a pop. This is a clean stack. Ladder, not really even as much because these orders aren't moving up themselves yet. This is just a stack. Maybe it's the same person, maybe it's a group of people, but 121,900, at both prices. So yeah, that's there for a reason. And as soon as that ended up showing up, I guess it pulled into it one more time. It pulled into it. It didn't fill the orders, but it just kind of hovered above that area, hovered above that 1225, and then took off again. So that made for a great move on the QBTS early this morning. Now, at this point, what the market's doing. SPY still holding really well still. Hasn't dropped off since we started this workshop. QBTS just pulling back a little bit now. All right, so it failed to flip 13 rightfully into a support. Maybe it could have here at this instance, but if it's not making a higher high again back up to like 1350, then the more times this level keeps getting poked at downward, the sellers are winning that battle. So not a surprise to see this happen now at this point, even with the SPY like holding. I mean, listen, Quantum is not name brand. Quantum is like, flavor of the week, flavor of the month in terms of like a hyped up sector. If you want name brand, like look at NVIDIA, look at Palantir, look at the NASDAQ 100 stocks. So just because the market's at the high of the day doesn't mean that this is going to hold. But also look at how much it ran up the last however many weeks. Don't get me wrong. This long-term chart looked great back from Wednesday, May 14th. We said that to you inside our live trading room. But the more it does keep pushing up, green bar after green bar after green bar after green bar, well, there's only two here, but otherwise, back from the beginning of like May 8th, there's going to be 6 green bars out of 8. That's very strong. Not only just that number, but the stock went from 7 to nearly 14, almost did a double. So if it ends up consolidating and taking time to build new support on the long term, then that's okay. I mean, that's actually what's more needed for the swing trade, if anything. You hear Fausto say that all the time with a lot of the swing trades we call out. Once they explode as a day trade, the more they keep exploding day after day after day, eventually it's got to come back down or just consolidate. So that's just more often what you're seeing now at this point. Now, I guess if you're looking for resistance to try and flip into support, I mean, if we're really grasping for levels here, I guess really now at this point, 1250, but also looks like just right around this area, decent little chart level, kind of peaked above it here, back down, but maybe that could flip into support. There's a thought behind that. If there's not really much volume around that price, then I'm not going to be as jumpy to take that type of trade. But for right now, it looks like there's about 74,000 shares on the bid sitting there at that 1250. So if it ends up coming in under and back above it, maybe there's thought behind seeing a squeeze again. But a trend off the highs is pretty sharp here, going down. It's not really my favorite type of play here at this point. If there's stocks closer to the highs, I'd rather look for that next leg up. This I think just already broke below a decent level here at that 13. So if you really love the quantum stocks and that's the only thing that you trade, then it's takeable, but just set your stop, because if it's not making that type of reaction that you would look for, much like we had earlier at 1225, then it's just not worth it. Not even to say you're going to lose. It's to say the time that you spend watching a stock do nothing and not make the move that you want it to make, then over time, there's just other opportunities that are moving without you. Like I kind of get skeeved out thinking about that. The more time I spend watching a stock just flatten out and do nothing, there's just opportunities elsewhere that I could be missing. So, here, this type of trade, I'd rather move on to something else. All right, folks, give me a quick moment here. I got to launch the old email machine. I didn't even do that early this morning, so should have had that here preloaded. But I got a bunch of questions that came in, at least from earlier for Traders Talk. So just give me a quick moment here. Okay, so this is the one I got here just from one of our students, Mike, asking more about the Bitcoin front. Josh, heading into the weekend, you were mentioning looking for a big pop. It looks like it ended up moving up a little bit, but came back down. Are you still confident about Bitcoin making a big push this week or next? Yeah, absolutely. So, as far as Bitcoin goes, we've recovered already a lot today, just seemingly with the market. So, we talked about this quite a bit, as far as just Bitcoin becoming more institutionalized. Obviously, the administration loves it. So if you're new to crypto, new to Bitcoin, welcome aboard. But this is where I'll tell you, at least, we're heading into the good time of the bull market. We have already. So if you're new to our streams, just realize we've been on top of this really since the beginning of last year, the beginning of 2024 even. So let's just go back to our charts. I'm gonna delete a couple of drawings here first, and I'll just make sure they go back later on. But all right, so here's my graph. This is Bitcoin daily chart. And what we've been covering is this indicator here called global M2 money supply. To give you the basic, Josh rendition of how this works. Basically, what the global M2 money supply, it's actually reported on a weekly matter, but this indicator tries to extrapolate it across a daily time frame here. So you're seeing this work out on a daily chart, but otherwise, the global M2 money supply is the cash, easy to convert assets like bonds, etc., that not just the United States, but major countries, Russia, China, etc., are using at least over time. So one thing to note is that the market goes up with it, but your best correlation has been with either gold, but now a lot more Bitcoin. And really, since the beginning of 2024, whether it's based off of the most recent Bitcoin halving that happened in April, whether it's based off of the IBIT, the Bitcoin ETF, whether it's based on just global acceptance of Bitcoin as far as a commodity asset, there has been extreme correlation between this, indicator, this metric, the global M2 money supply here in blue, and Bitcoin price action. Is it perfect? No. Is there divergence at times? But I think that you could see from the beginning of 2024, from where my cursor is here, and just do a little, there we go, since that line, been on a pretty similar move, right? Some shakes here and there when there begins to be divergence. You'll see further until it correlates better over time. But we've been calling this out really since I think it was even early March that we've been discussing the beginning of a bounce. But if not otherwise, once we notice that the M2 money supply is going to begin to bounce here, what do you think Bitcoin's going to do? So yes, there's divergence at times. Like for instance here, notice that there is supposed to be a little lower high, little consolidation within the M2, and then a pop. Well, Bitcoin decided to pop early, right? So it did, go off track a little bit. But if you're just assuming that, yeah, with every time the M2 global money supply either breaks a new high or makes a more extreme rise up over time, when you see Bitcoin just easily go with it, 1 plus 1 doesn't equal 27, my friends. 1 plus 1 equals 2. Don't need to overcomplicate things. That's what I'm trying to tell you here. So if you're looking at IBIT, if you're looking at just Bitcoin itself, buy and hold. We've been saying that from the beginning of May. We said May and June at the least are holding months. The issue, though, is that for anyone here that's doing more leveraged positions, like for instance, there's actually a leveraged ETF, BITX. Now today it's up 2%. That's because basically the non-leveraged is up 1%. So for right now, if you're trading BITX and you get caught on a downwind, you get caught on a trend down a bit, this technically makes double the drop off that regular Bitcoin makes. If you're on a crypto exchange and doing perps or futures like I do, that's where the news that came out over the last day and a half, over the night with Moody's and the downgrade in Japan, that makes for a freaking volatile market, my friends. Look at this price action. Look at this price action here. This is just from yesterday morning, Sunday morning, popped up to like 106 almost. then back down to 103 and a half, back up again to 107, then back down to 102. That's super volatile. I mean, just look at the recent price action here. It moved up pretty nicely at this point. It started to flatten out, expectedly so. But these shakes are a hell of a lot larger compared to at least what we've been seeing for a little while. Maybe there was one instance here where the markets crashed here going into mid May, like, what was it, a week ago? Pop and drop from that 105. The more it keeps knocking on that door, though, you're expecting for a cleaner breakout to happen. So that's where here at like 105, let's just use, because we've been talking about that as a big volume level for a little while. So the more it keeps poking on that, resistance, it should break out. I was hopeful for that to happen heading into Sunday night. Right here, it started off good, but then it came back down, came back up again. I had my feet kicked up here on my leveraged position. I was in from 104, a little bit underneath it, and things were looking great. I had my feet kicked up. Oh my God, this is great because at least this should flip this into support, right? Because off such a clean breakout here, let's go. Now let's just flip this into support and we're on our merry way. Probably look to break all-time highs by next week then, right? I think what happened here was that pretty much this was like maybe the moment when the Japan news came out. The Moody's downgrade was on Friday afternoon. So that was on the 16th at like right here. So Bitcoin recovered way afterwards. It wasn't as affected by the Moody's downgrade. But when the extra news came out about not even the Japan stuff, but also the 10-year treasury yield, right? So that is over like 5% now. Everyone's worrying about that as that's been breaking higher highs. So that prompts a sharper drop. I was hoping to see this flip into support well. So once it pulled underneath it here, I bailed out on my leveraged position. It's more volatile and there's threat of liquidation. So I'd rather not hold on to that when I'm more uncertain here. But listen, if this is going to push back above 105 later on tonight, then game back on to me because I am expecting a higher high on this. So listen, if you are keeping it simple, if you're just buying, your Bitcoin, you're buying your IBIT, buy and hold. Go as you will here. Don't worry about these shakes. I strongly believe we're going to break new all-time highs. I don't want to give a time, so I'll just say much sooner than later. But that's just based off the global M2 money supply. But if you are doing a more risk-on position, I didn't like this. I wasn't a fan of seeing this shit. I was expecting to see support hold pretty well. So the fact that it came below it, I'm happy I avoided taking a larger hit on it because look how far it dropped off. And listen, if it's going to break lower lows here over time, there's a much larger volume gap for this to try and fill. I mean, you can say just basically down there. One moment here, one moment here, one moment here. There's a much larger volume gap for Bitcoin to try and fill over time. I mean, if this really were to fail here and break lower lows, which I don't think it will here coming up now at this point, but if it were to have, then I could have seen it drop back down towards like 98, 96 or so, back into this volume cluster, back from like the end of last year, the beginning of this year. So with this slingshot, I'm a fan. I really like how well this is recovered. But if you're doing a more risk on position now at this stage, I would definitely just look to make sure this flips this into support. Once it does, we're going way higher. Once this flips into support, I believe we're going much higher. All right, so that's all. So I was just mentioning that from the end of last week based off the global M2 money supply, thinking, hey, based on that, we should look to go up pretty easily. I don't know when the Moody's news came out. What was that at like 6 o'clock on Friday, 5 o'clock on Friday, 7 o'clock p.m. on Friday? I mean, after the market closed, right? So when that news comes out, that throws a damper in some plans or a wrench in some plans. Obviously, a couple more things adding on top with that. But hey, just seeing how strong we've recovered here altogether, I don't mind taking a trade right off that 105 at this point because of the conviction I have. So again, it all goes back to what we just said before, at least with the stock market. I don't mind taking a trade from a higher price level than here if there's more conviction behind the move. Earlier, I think a lot of us were expecting more of a drop. So it's tougher to have conviction to just buy, right? For anyone that wasn't as worried about that, hey, today worked out well for you, right? But we're not always going to get that right, especially coming off the news that came out. It's very understandable to be more bearish. It's very understandable to be a lot less bullish here right at 9:30 in the morning. There's a fine difference between being less bullish and being more bearish, right? So I got to use my words very delicately here because, like I told you from the jump, I am not bearish. If you are bearish, hey, try and short this market, my friend. Hasn't been working out too much really since. Once Trump came in office, the news started coming out about the potential tariffs and obviously a lot of hesitancy. I'm sure there was some stuff back then with the 10-year treasury yield spiking at that point, even. So, yeah, it led to a drop off. Does it lead to a couple of short-lived short trades? Yeah. But if you're looking for like the next recession, the next credit, it's the second time I'm going to do this right now. Just popped up in my head here. I did this once a number of months back, and I don't want to cause any beef, but who here is familiar with Rich Dad Poor Dad? I'm going to do this again here. Who here is familiar with Rich Dad Poor Dad? Robert Kiyosaki? And listen, anyone that's been doing this as long as he has is a smart guy. So I'm not saying that he's going to be wrong over time, but let me just pull up a couple of tweets here from my friend Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad, because it's like the boy who cried wolf. I just did a search on his Twitter account with the word stocks. So this is back from February 20th. He's talking about the stock market crashing back from July of 2022, February of 2023. This was during COVID time. So obviously, the whole market dropped then quickly. But point being is that, if you're really bearish on the stock market, don't just say it. Do it. Short it. See what happens, right? It's one thing to say it, but it's another thing to do it. He didn't do it. He's not short on stocks. He's just kind of fear-mongering a bit. Because for every time that we've had a small drop, we've squeezed right back on up, right? So that's what leaves me to have conviction to be more bullish at a higher price level, especially here now at this stage in the afternoon. We finished up reversal time at 10:30 in the morning. So yeah, at 10:30, at 11 o'clock, I'm not screaming bullish here because there could still be threat of a lower low, lower high, lower low situation. But the longer we're holding here, hey, that's where that strength, that conviction builds back up again. So, yeah, don't mean to cause any beef there, Robert Kiyosaki. Eventually you'll be right with the stock market crash and going into a giant recession. Sam says, for longer term trends, pay attention to the bond market, much bigger and usually correct. Yeah, I mean, hey, I got to even familiarize myself more with that. One thing I want to focus on a little bit is the 10-year and 20-year treasury yield, Sam. So this one ticker here, TLT, has been dropping off quite a bit because I think this runs inverse to the treasury yield. This is 20-year, but I think this is the one that most traders will look to follow, trading 28 million shares total on the day. So I think a lot of people are looking for a correction on this and for this to eventually circle back up over time. So I just wanted to shout that out, this like TLT trade. You might hear a little bit more from me on that side of things. But Victor asking, can we take a look at NVIDIA? Yeah, absolutely, my friend. Absolutely. Yeah. So listen, market pushing upward a little bit right now, holding here pretty nicely. It still likely needs to eventually pop back over Friday's close, which it probably just hit right now as resistance. So it's there. It just now needs to make the next break above resistance. But if you compare that to NVIDIA, I mean, hey, NVIDIA has been holding pretty nicely, mind you, but it's been having a tough time of trying to run higher off 135. That's at least for today. Right away for a stock like NVIDIA, I'm more so focused not on those 50-cent levels and dollar levels. NVIDIA is like too volatile, too expensive to do that. And I wouldn't even use the dollar levels. I would just go every $5. So 130, 135, up top 140. So I will tell you, at least earlier today, it broke back over 135 here. You have a pretty decent spike of volume. The opening print kind of diminishes how this looks, but it's a pretty big spike. I mean, so almost a million shares of buying volume here on this one candle. So it breaks over it, it moves off of it okay. So there's thought behind the flipping of that into a support, getting the job done to start here, looking good. Now, though, it needs to run higher. And if it's not going to run higher, the more it keeps pecking this, poking this, it's going to eventually break it as a support level and then reflip that back into a resistance, I'm sure, over time. So now that's on the day trading front. If you're looking long term, though, so let's just look at this more from a like a swing long term perspective. That's where you have to zoom out, right? Because if you're blending your day trading with your swing trading, it's going to do you more harm than good. Because when you need to think long term and you start thinking more micro, you're going to start messing up trades left and right. You're going to take more trades, get stopped out, jump back in, get stopped out again, and just get pissed off about it all. I've been there, trust me, because I unfortunately put myself in that position at times with Bitcoin, with like my leverage positions. So once I get out, even if I make money, I'll be like, all right, well, like getting back in is not going to be as easy because if I'm not zoomed out looking at the longer term levels, then I might take an erroneous entry. I might take something where I'm expecting more momentum and I'm not getting it. I'll even jump back to Bitcoin again in a moment. I'll show the 105 in just a moment, that 105,000 level. Again, I have pretty good conviction of that being a make or break level here coming up for Bitcoin. So if it breaks over that, I'll feel pretty good about the run. Give me a moment. Where's my trading view? All right, so let's go back to NVIDIA at least. So before the melt up that we've just had, right, going back into April, into the end of April, if you're looking for an entry on NVIDIA, you want to focus on where we previously had support. Let me just do this first. I'll even a little snapshot here on this. Got my inner Picasso in me here. Just give me a moment. So notice that NVIDIA here basically built a bottom, built another bottom here. I know it wicked down here, but it actually gapped down and then popped back up. So I know this is like one little low, but I'm not focused on that as much. Just focused on the overall movement here where it kind of bottoms out, goes back up. So that looks like pretty clean support that was building on the initial run from last year. You need to see that get reclaimed as support. So it doesn't mean it's going to hold it perfectly on a pullback. It just means that if you're looking for an entry, that needs to be reclaimed over time. So I'm just going to just quickly draw these two lines here. Kind of interesting how this one was perfect resistance. Then we had May of last year with the giant pop. So this resistance cleanly did flip into support really well. That makes the job even easier for us. But listen, it ended up coming down. It broke under it for a moment, right? It broke into it on these gaps. It crushed lower here, gap down even more. That's where you don't want to catch a falling knife. And I'll actually answer this because one of our students, Dawn, was asking about this earlier, I believe, in the phase one class, right? Because I said I'll look for this on the swing side of things, but just it broke under it and it dropped off a lot, actually. Listen, this thing dropped off about 10%, if not more. Yeah, a lot more than 10%. So ultimately, I'm going to look to see this flip into a support level in due time. There we go. It popped back over it here. And then on the retracement again, it ended up basically within the sequence, holding higher low, basically flipped this into support here and then moved back up. Great entry. Now at this stage, if you had missed that, what is next? That's where it's tougher to use a previous support here because it seemed like there was just more congestion off the tops as resistance. So you could possibly use like this. There's a thought behind that. It does look pretty good. It looks pretty decent. 128 and change, roughly. Now it broke back over here and it just only gapped up higher. And listen, if the markets keep popping, there's a thought behind this not pulling back for a little while. This is where you might need to be patient. You might need to be patient here, waiting for one more dip back down and then the slingshot afterwards. If this ends up just pushing up from this point, then you have to look for a cleaner break of resistance at this point. And you might even need to just wait till 150. You might just need to wait till 150 gets flipped at that stage. It's tough taking a trade in between levels. So this does look pretty clean, but just now it's in like way over it now. So, if you jumped in here, great. If you jumped in on this candle as it was pushing above it, worked out for you, I guess. But you got to be patient now at this stage. That's what I'd say. Sam saying NVIDIA is holding better due to the quote unquote glow of Jensen Huang selling Blackwell chips to Saudi. I expect a small drop prior to earnings on May 28th. Yeah, Sam is pretty experienced on NVIDIA, not just like on price action, but he keeps his ear to the floor of the market there in terms of like their day-to-day operations. He's an investor as well as a trader on it. So it would be interesting to see if we get that pullback that I would feel confident at first of seeing this flip back into support. I feel confident at first. If it just breaks below it and just drops fast, you're probably going to see something happen here where it broke into it, made a slingshot after, and then ran. So I don't try and catch a falling knife. Just try and wait to see it come down there first and then react afterwards. That's it. Before closing here, any comments on PTIX? Thanks. Let's take a look. It's like a grinder. I'm not a fan of it. Just chop, 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 chop. So, I mean, that's easy to say now, but looking at this trade from earlier today, right? Earlier, I'll focus on this from like pre-market levels. This looks very choppy, right? Chop, 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 chop. Typically, stocks will retain trade personalities within the morning. So when you see it, like, yeah, it's up. And yeah, there could be real levels to use, like looking at the chart or looking at Bookmap. Maybe there could be a big volume level. And of course, it popped. So decent move. But if it's choppy in pre-market, for a long period of time like this, then there's a pretty good chance it's going to become choppy again at some point down the line today. So after the morning run that we had, even here, like it popped up pretty quick. Oh, it's actually 10:30. So this was like a nothing burger here at first. It dropped off pretty quickly. In fact, it moved back up, I guess. It started to pop. This is where you become a little bit more interested in taking the trade, even with it being at 10:30 in the morning. If it's going to build higher lows and higher highs at this stage, then again, I don't mind taking a trade from a higher price level if there's more conviction behind the move. So maybe at like $9, whole number level, it was poking it a number of times early, blasted over it here, flipped it into support here. There are levels, right? But if it's choppy here in pre-market, it's choppy here at this point after the open as well, choppy here, it's going to get choppy again. You can't fight it. Don't think it's just going to be a perfect runner now because it's up a lot today or it popped earlier. So is it possible it could, make another pop? Yeah, but at least looking at it right now live currently, this to me is up almost too much percentage-wise, and it's so choppy to begin. I just likely stay away from it here. Pull up Bookmap here before we finish up. A little bit of a ladder kicking in, maybe. A little bit of a ladder kicking in there. So, yeah, I mean, there's a chance where this could continue, but there isn't really much volume that it's like seemingly breaking over. I don't really see like massive resistance here that's getting pushed above by buyers or pushed out by buyers. Obviously, the orders on the bid look pretty large. They just moved this one down a bit. Why would they move it down, right? Maybe there's a thought behind this just dropping into this area here coming up. So, this is not something I'm really trying to trade myself. I wouldn't want traders to jump into this right now, really. Bit of a spread. So unless if it's moving a lot better, I wouldn't want to be trading a stock that's choppy plus big spread, right? That's something that really I'd look at right away. But it's actually that this was so choppy and rugged here that took my attention even more first. So, it's up. If anyone jumped in earlier, or if you just got in from a cleaner level, then kudos. But yeah, it's not something I'm trying to like give as much attention to now. But hey, if this was moving better in terms of the minute by minute, if this had a tighter spread, more filled in order book, that's what we really need to focus on always. I'd be interested in it, right? All right, folks. Hey, we're going to finish up at least here in just a moment. Hey, if you wanted to join us inside our live trading room, you can actually scan the QR code. I believe we'll pop that up here in just a moment. Join us inside our live trading room with this QR code popping up here. with your phone, with your camera. Join us inside our live trading room. But otherwise, if you're not as fancy with the tech, you just go right down to the link scrolling below on the bottom there in blue. Little alliteration there for you. But ctu.co/trial. Join us for a week-long stay inside the trading floor. Get all of our students right now: Victor, Samlin, and Randy, Michael, Kathleen, Alicia, Wiz, Tim, Pat, Anna, Ray, Margaret, all of us here inside our live trading room right now. Currently, there's about 120 of us live right there. So, yeah, otherwise, we're here each and every Monday. If you're joining us on social media at noon Eastern, do a live workshop here, Traders Talk. All right, folks. Hey, look at the SPY right now. We're actually back to break even. We are pretty much right at Friday's closing price already. So very strong market, right? I don't mind missing a little bit of this if it provides more conviction for a higher high later on. That was our whole theme for this lesson. But folks, we'll be back later on this afternoon at 2:30 p.m. Eastern. If you're joining us inside our live trading room, we'll come back live at 2:30 just for the afternoon meeting. And then, hey, if you're a phase 1 student, I see Sam, Victor, Farzad, Wiz, Gillis, Lynn, and Randy. I mean, pretty much the majority of the members here are students. Give a quick shout out to a few here I just see just tuning in right now. You know, Brian V, one of our platinum students, John, one of our gold students, Frederick, joining us in phase 1 from France, Adel, one of our gold students, and Gary, and just a few more of us that were with us earlier today. We'll be back in the phase 1 stock course later on today at 3 o'clock. All right, folks, I'll talk to you all then. Take care.